Kevin, you were so good last week, we decided to invite you back again, so thanks for taking the time with us.
I must have been good because it was a 7-6 game, so I don't know why you want to hear from me again.
Let's start with this. How many of our Provo area food recommendations did you take us up on last week?
I went to J-Dog's a couple of hours after the call, actually.
Nice.
And had a phenomenal Polish dog.
Okay.
Got the special sauce on there. The gentleman behind the counter recommended mayonnaise and a little onions and sauerkraut, so I did all that. That was awesome. Had Bam Bams on Friday night. Some of the best barbecue of my life, genuinely. Andre Ware and I feasted on brisket and turkey. The ribs were amazing. Mac and cheese. The mac and cheese had some little bits of goldfish in there, which I thought was unique and delicious. And then I can't remember what I did. Oh, you know what? Saturday, because it was the game, we just ate the press spread, which was some Brazilian barbecue place.
Tucanos, which is
also a hot spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, also a hot spot.
I've basically been on a cleanse since last week.
Listen, BYU may not have scored a touchdown in the game, but they scored a touchdown with the food, I think, right?
Yeah, you needed to cleanse after the game that you called last week.
Yeah, maybe that's what got my stomach. I'm not sure. It could have been the back-to-back barbecue, or it could have been the 7-6 affair.
So let's talk about that. Last week, BYU loses a game at home in which it scores no touchdowns. NIU comes in, plays the great defensive game we thought they would. Now BYU goes up to Boise State against a prolific offense. You probably couldn't have two more different offenses back-to-back than these two. So what do you think of the different kind of matchup that is BYU against Boise State?
Yeah, I mean, Northern Illinois coming into last week was worse than anybody else in the country in pass yards per attempt besides Rutgers. And then to go from that to Boise State, my gosh, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. This is a huge turnaround in terms of distinct styles. Now, Boise is a little bit inconsistent. Brett Rippon has had a couple of really rough games this year, but they've generally come against better defensive teams. Oklahoma State was really able to rush the passer. Same with San Diego State. So Boise has about a half dozen terrific wide receivers. Well, they got a strong running back in Alex Madison. They're susceptible, though, to a good pass rush, and that's, I think, BYU's best potential strength here. The way they rushed the passer last week was impressive. Obviously, they held NIU to 7. They were doing something right. I like the way they moved Kafusi and Shone Takitaki and that front around. Boise's right side of the offensive line is the one to watch. Their left tackle, their left guard, and their center are all good, and they've all started. Ezra Cleveland, John Molchon, and Garrett Larson, they've all started every game this year. They've moved in a new right tackle and right guard the last 2 weeks, and their fans have been very frustrated with the lack of run production, which is part of the reason they've thrown it so much, and with the right side of that line in particular. I think BYU can get pressure, and that may be your best case scenario. As good as BYU's defensive backs are, I think Boise's wide receivers are just across the board better. They have so many options that it's hard to shut anyone down. They're extremely balanced. After last year, Cedric Wilson just ate up all their catches. They're so much more balanced now. But if you can get pressure and force Rippon to rush the ball out, I think that's your potential biggest strength. You have to, though. If you can't get pressure, he is going to pick you apart.
Okay, BYU will take any weakness that can be exploited, so I'm sure the Cougars and their defensive staff will be all over that. That said, the offense is another head-scratcher. We saw BYU put up 49 points against Hawaii, and then 2 weeks later, they managed 2 field goals against Northern Illinois. Granted, the Huskies' defense is really good. What do you expect from the BYU offense, led by quarterback Zach Wilson, this week around in Boise?
Well, we talked on the phone a couple of days ago to Zach and to Kalani Sitake, and the mantra from them is they're going to play to Zach's strengths. You know, they're going to be more aggressive with him, which, having watched him on film one game and having watched him in person one game, it would strike me as letting him air it out a little bit more and using the quarterback run game. Now, I think they wanted to use the quarterback run game more last week. Northern just did a great job of spying Zach. It seemed like anytime he wanted to get on the run, there was a linebacker, there was a safety in the middle of the field eyeing him down. He was never able to do that. His one spectacular run, obviously, was the hurdle play. But outside of that, there weren't many moments where he impacted the game with his legs. I think they will try to do that more. I'm sure Boise will be ready for it. I think they'll try to take a few more shots. Again, your offensive line's got to hold up for that. And this is where we talked so glowingly about all the young players last week, all the youth. Their inconsistency comes with youth, and the offensive line plainly did not play well last week. So I am all for trying to play to Zach's strengths more, letting him air it out, letting him run, but you got to block up front. And if BYU can't do that, you could be in for more of the same, because it is just an inconsistency that we saw time and again with the offensive line last week. BYU moved the ball well at times and then would seem to get to the 42 or the 47-yard line and just stall out because they couldn't get a hat on a hat.
This was September, not November, but BYU has gone on the road and defeated 2 Power 5 teams in Arizona and Wisconsin. Had a clunker at Washington, but this is a team that we've been talking about has been very two-faced. At home is one thing, and on the road is another. So what kind of BYU do you expect after last week, given how BYU's playing on the road, which is pretty good?
Yeah, I thought, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this, I thought Michael Shelton's comments were really fascinating this week, and I don't often hear a level of honesty like that among a college player, talking about the different road and home atmospheres. I think there maybe is a little something to that. It's when you're talking about 19 to 23-year-old kids, it's hard for me to ascribe any consistency with they do X at home and Y on the road. It just changes from time to time. I do think there will be a good amount of BYU fans. I do think this will be a great environment. It's a smaller stadium, obviously, than Lavelle Edwards. They pack it. They pack it every year for this game. They genuinely seem to think it's a rivalry here, as in reading comments and talking to Kalani, people up in Provo do as well. So I think a young team sometimes needs a little extra push, and they will get that from the crowd tomorrow night. I expect this to be, if not sold out, close. And I expect that means we'll get BYU's best effort. Listen, I mean, you and I both, good luck figuring out a team that did what they did at Wisconsin and then came home and scored 6 later in the year against NIU. That's young teams. Young teams are inconsistent, and they have seemed to, with the exception of Washington, rise to the occasion in better, louder environments. I think tomorrow night will be a better, louder environment. So I guess, judging by the data, we'll get a good effort from BYU.
Kevin, it's great to talk to you again. I'm sure you have your food options locked down in Boise, so good luck there. We're glad that you got a cleanse on, and have a great call tomorrow night.
I've been told Fork is the spot, but if you're listening to this and you're in Boise, just go tomorrow. Leave me some space for tonight.
Very good. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, guys.